Thank you.
After Uvalde, unfortunately, there's been a lot of discussion and negotiation and calls for action after that massacre. And so I'm wondering, where are you on this situation, as far as potential legislation that could pass in response?
Well, first of all, like I do want to say our hearts go out to the people of Uvalde. Nobody can stand in those parents or grandparents or kids' shoes. It's just unbelievable what happened, and we do need to fix it. But this is not, unfortunately, hasn't been a new program. And we know Parkland comes to mind real quick, several years ago down in Florida. And the problem we got up here in Congress is that we talk all the time and we get nothing done. And we have all this debate going on like we had yesterday and taking votes on issues that are never going to change. And all the time, what makes me mad up here is that we have this dialogue, we do nothing to secure the schools. For example, I've got a bill right now, it's $1.2 billion that allows schools, not school entities, but the school itself, to see what their needs may be, bulletproof glass doors or whatever, and they can apply for this grant and they get money and we can begin to secure these schools. This debate's going to go forever. And we got to stop the debate. We got to secure the schools. We got to put money in there to secure these schools, protect these teachers, these kids, our grandkids, and everybody else. And that's the problem I have with all of this: is we need to quit talking and we need action, and it needs to happen with securing the schools.
And let me ask you, as far as your funding is concerned, that 1.2 billion, it would go for vulnerability assessments and also the physical security improvements. And when you see that the doors may not have worked and may have not have automatically locked in at that Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, what thoughts do you have?
Well, you think if my bill would have been in place or we would have spent the money for that very thing, maybe we could have saved a tragedy. A tragedy we got is my bill that I'm talking about. This got bipartisan support. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she and I are as far apart on the spectrum as you can get. She signed on with us today. And Congressman Deutsch from Parkland signed on with us the last couple of weeks. So it's bipartisan. And I just think that something like this could have kept this from happening. But the problem is we've had this bill out there for about 3 years and Pelosi won't even bring it on the floor. And this is something that, like I say, should be easy to pass. So we've got to push that aspect, and possibly that door might not have been able to be open if we would have had an assessment of the facility and it could have been created as such and fixed.
So let me ask you, because I've had discussions, and while there are a lot of people calling for making improvements, security enhancements at schools, um, there's some disagreement as to how much should be there, and also, whether there should be a armed law enforcement officer stationed at every school.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that there is enough that people agree on to make this happen, number one? And number two, whose decision is it ultimately? Does it become mandatory in your mind that these school districts have to do this, or is it up to the school districts themselves?
Well, right now our bill is going to be managed by the Department of Justice, and it's not necessarily a school district. You could have an elementary school in the same town as a high school, and their needs are going to be totally different. So that's the way it's set up. They do the assessment, they turn it in the Department of Justice. Let's say they need $100,000, they get $100,000, and it's simple. And we're giving $40 billion to Ukraine. Wouldn't it be nice if we could? I'm just picking a number, give 4 or 5 billion to secure our schools. So I think that we have the assets to do it, and we have the appetite to do it. We just need to forget a lot of the dialogue, not forget, but put to the side a lot of the dialogue we're having, like we did last night, on bills that are never going to pass. They're never going to happen, and focus on real time, which is school security.
Which brings me to my next question. As you know, Senator Cornyn is leading Republican negotiations in the Senate with Senate Democrats in order to get to that magic number of 60 at least. And so I'm wondering, how much faith do you have in those discussions that are being held? And are you prepared, once, if and when they do come up with an agreement, is that something you think you could sign off on?
Well, of course, Senator Cornyn is a good friend of mine, so I know it's all done in good faith and everything. I just have to see what their product is. You know, I have two granddaughters. I have two daughters. I want them to be safe in school. And, but I don't, let's see what the product has they come up, but it's got to be a product that does not make people have to sign up for the Second Amendment, for example. It can't tear apart the Constitution. It gets back to what I've said all along. The fix is three things. The fix is we have the issue with mental illness. Now, I don't know the answer to that, to be candid. But we talk about mental illness all the time. We know it's an issue. The second and the real fix, it takes a long time to get it fixed again, is bringing back the family unit. I mean, we don't have, you know, we need to get back to where kids are playing in the front yard, mom's cooking them dinner, dad's eating dinner with them, they're going to church, they're going to little league games. The family unit, like all of us had neighborhood schools and all this sort of thing. That's the fix, but we've gotten away from it. And then thirdly, it's secure in our schools. And that's where I want to focus on is mental illness, the family unit, and secure in our schools. If they come up with a program that's going to work like that, I'm going to take a hard look at it. But if they want to do things like red flag laws and challenge the Second Amendment and challenge due process, I'm not going to be there.
When it relates to the red flag laws, are you open to the idea if there is due process built into it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd take a look at it, but right now there's not.
And let me ask you one thing that Senator Cornyn mentioned the other day. We know with this 18-year-old shooter, the gunman, had a history of problems, some mental health issues. And one thing that Senator Cornyn mentioned is, you know, had the person or had that the gunman's mental health history been able to be in a background check, there's no way that that person, you know, that he would have been able to get a gun had they known what had transpired in his teenage years. What do you think about that idea?
Well, I mean, if we can fix that and to where we can pull up, you know, we have background checks now. I mean, it's not
Right.
like we don't have them, but to where where that particular situation in his past would pull up and it would show on the background check, well, absolutely. It might kept him from getting a weapon or ask more questions. So I hope they're coming to solutions like that that will work. That just not solutions though that said, well, we're going to take your guns away, we're going to do this and that. We don't ever take the guns away from the we take them away from the good people, never the bad people, and that's the issue. So I hope they come up with a product I can look at.
And so when you hear, I know last night there was a vote on gun restrictions. I would imagine you voted against that.
Yes, I vote against all of them because none of them are going to pass. None of them have a way to proceed. And I want to get it back to what real time is. And real time is just what we talked about is mental illness, family unit, and secure in the schools. That's what we should be focusing on.
And so when you hear Democrats say that, you know, Republicans care more about the gun lobby than they do children, what do you say to them?
Well, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't care. I mean, the gun lobby, I don't even think about the gun lobby. I think of my kids and my grandkids. I think what was horrible yesterday is they exploited a young girl that was in the tragedy in Uvalde and made her come up here and testify for crying out loud. That is making it totally political. And that should have never happened. So when they say that, they're out of it.
I did want to ask you about some other items in the news. As you know, tonight, the January 6th committee is holding a primetime hearing. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that it's a waste of taxpayers' money. And Jack, I'll tell you, I travel, of course, all over my district, but I travel all over the country, frankly speaking, and so forth. And I never, ever have anybody, when we have Q&A or whatever, want to know about January 6th. Nobody even asks about it. It's not a factor to anybody but the people on that panel and inside the belt loop. It's not an issue. Why aren't we having a prime time? I think you said prime time on inflation. Why aren't we having prime time on gas prices? Why aren't we having prime time on this administration wanting to raise taxes? Why don't we have prime time on the border where I was last week and saw the worst scenario you can imagine for this country, the illegal people coming across this border that are invading us? Why can't we talk about that? You see, but we're going to have this committee, which we've already had committees investigate January 6th, that it's going to, it's only there to hurt Trump, and Trump's not our president. And Jack, I was here on January 6th, okay? I was here working in my office. And it was nothing compared to what I went through and my other teammates at the baseball shooting 5 years ago. That was serious. Now, I don't like to see people knocking things over in barriers. That's not good. None of that was good. But at the same time, to be having a trial on this and bringing Trump people back to embarrass them and to whatever, it's not what America wants. And you look, I've even watched your show, and when you do polling, for example, January 6th never shows up. Right now, it's economy, it's inflation, it's baby food, for crying out loud. That's what people are concerned about. And I would say this to you: anybody watches this theatrics tonight, and if maybe maybe their mind changes, maybe they think, well, maybe that's right. I guarantee you, whatever they thought of tonight is going to be blown away tomorrow when they go to the gas pump to fill their gas tanks up, because they know who did that, and that's one of the issues that they're concerned about.
So let me ask you, because we've got, I think now it's like 800 people are in the process of being prosecuted for this by the Justice Department, prosecutors, et cetera. And so I guess they're trying to figure out if there was any coordination between the White House, the Trump White House, and all these folks here. Should we get to the bottom of it, or, and should the process have been a little bit so that Republicans would be able to cross-examine these witnesses?
So look, we all believe in transparency, and this administration has really been the worst on transparency. We don't know where we stand on a lot of issues. But at the same time, Jack, look at this. This committee, when it started, this is not even a real committee. Okay, it's not even a real committee at all, because Pelosi asked Kevin McCarthy to put his group of team together. He put Jim Jordan and Jim Banks on there, and she didn't accept them. Well, it's not even a real committee now, see? So it's just theatrics is all it is, and America deserves better. But we don't even have a committee that counts. It's a Pelosi committee.
My last question to you, and I appreciate your time, Congressman, and that is your priorities for the rest of the year.
Well, right now, between now and November, I think a lot of what we are is to play defense. I'm a big proponent of lower tax. I believe in cutting taxes. This group wants to increase taxes, so I want to make sure that we are able to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent. I'd like to see that. I want to see our borders secure. I mean, this border's a disaster. If you've probably been down there, but it's like watching a movie, seeing the illegal people breaking the law, coming over through a wall that's breaking down, and Border Patrol's overwhelmed. We've got Russians, we've got Chinese, we've got Iranians, we've got Venezuelans, we've got Yemenis coming in here. It's not the Mexican coming over here for seasonal work. And these people are coming over here to harm this country. And we're doing nothing about it. So I want to see our economy get strong. I want to stop this inflation that Biden has no clue what to do. We got to stop printing money and borrowing the printed money. Okay, we got to stop our spending. So between the economy, inflation, the border, our presence with the military, I represent Fort Hood. I want to make sure that we take care of our soldiers and so forth. Those are kind of my priorities. But I'm also going to play defense against bad legislation, much like I did last night.
Congressman Roger Williams of the 25th District here in Texas, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
It's always good to see you.